We need to go ahead and get this started. We have a quorum. Let's go ahead and call today's special called meeting of April the 2nd at 9:31. We're starting a little bit early because we do have a lot of items that were requested to be put on by the members. Do we have any comments from the public, or do we have a public out there, Miss Jody?
We have Jeff Holly with Helena is online and
Sorry?
Jeff Holly with Helena is online.
All right.
And that is
Are there any comments from the public?
do not see any.
No comments, we'll move forward then. We'll start out with agenda item 1, discuss the tariff comparison studies among the Texas ports as presented by Mr. Butler. Raymond, please, Raymond.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Mike for helping me gather most of this information, and Rachel for helping me get it formatted into this spreadsheet. Thank you both very much. There's a ton of information here. But rather than go through this in detail, let me just try to summarize what I come away from all of this with. First off, we had a question about tariffs and applying tariffs to trucks. Several of the Texas ports do collect tariffs from trucking into their facilities. So if that's something that we decide we want to do, we wouldn't be the first to do it. It's commonly done. What I did find out was that particularly at the Port of Victoria and the Port of Point Comfort over there, they're both pretty consistent with their dockage charges. Dockage is sometimes called wharfage. Tariffs are applied to volumes of cargo that cross the dock, either by rail, truck, or barge. So we're doing tariffs. We have our own tariff rates, and I think they're fairly close to the others. I don't have any particular strong comments about the tariffs that we do charge. What I do think we need to pay some attention to is the dockage. All of the ports essentially collect a charge when a vessel comes into its harbor. Sometimes that is a harbor entrance fee, just for the fact of being there in the harbor. There's fees for that charged by several of the ports. And there's also a use fee for just occupying the water within the harbor that's taken up by a towboat or barges, just by virtue of the fact they're within the confines of the port's maintained harbor. I don't think that we have been doing that. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure exactly what we are doing relative to dockage fees. I know we have a dockage fee rate here, which is comparable to the others, but how are we applying it? We need to pay some attention to. I go down to the Harbor of Refuge quite often. Towboats and barges come in there many times, and they sit and walk. They're waiting for those shore tanks to get full. Those barges are probably loading around 25,000 barrels each. There's one down there right now that's waiting to be loaded. Do we charge for that waiting period for the boat and the barge, as others do? And are we religious about capturing when they arrive and when they leave? I don't know that we're doing that. So we may not be, but we should focus on trying to do that. Other ports are doing it. They also, yes, Larry?
So is this?
Yeah, that's what we're doing now.
This, and so in the, it says city of Port Lavaca, it's column, but it's blank. It's column of tariff comparison, Texas ports, the city of Port Lavaca. Column is blank, so we're supposed to use this instead of this.
That is definitely what we are doing today.
I'm just trying to figure this out.
Right. I apologize for there are some inconsistencies in the spreadsheet. It is just one heck of a job to try to rationalize all of it. And what everybody's doing that's on a comparable basis. I spent at least 3 full days doing this, and there comes a time when my time is limited. Okay. And I honestly think we should spend a little bit of time thinking about exactly what we want to do. Possibly we can get to an answer this morning, but
You're familiar with this chart. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're familiar with this charge. And as Larry brought up, we have dockage charges on our tariff.
Mhm.
And we have it at all our places. We have the public dock, we have the harbor, the marina, and commercial fishing rates. Will you take us through there and give us a recommendation as where we need to change? And then bring it to, I guess, the harbor master's attention that and Rachel, that we do execute those fees that are due us. Any changes or improvements? You put a lot of work into
I
it.
put a lot of work into it.
It's obvious.
Yeah, I would like for. I'm not prepared to give that recommendation this morning.
Okay,
Compared to what is here.
okay.
But what I'm trying to do is make you guys aware of exactly what we are doing. You need to be comfortable with that. I'm not sure that this is all accurate and that this is what we want to do.
We have multiple barges, I guess, part of the deal. We have multiple barges come in and then layer up.
Yeah,
We do not charge for that right now.
yeah. See, it's those kinds of things, Mike, that we need to be aware of and start trying to take account of. For instance, when we double up tows, not often do tows come into that liquid Gulfmark dock doubled up. But occasionally they may bring another barge with them and put it off to the side or outside the other. That's taking up our water space. And we should be charging a bleeding fee, a labor fee for the presence of that vessel. And there should also be some sort of a harbor entrance fee, which covers things like, right now, we don't have anybody that's really keeping track of this. When they come in, when they leave, when they start loading, when they stop discharging, do we verify the amount of material that's transferred? Somebody needs to be doing that. And these harbor entrance fees help cover those for other ports.
Would that require additional staff?
It probably will, Larry, because we don't have that. And right now, Jimbo that takes some time to monitor all of that.
Would the additional staff be paid for by the package fees or by this entrance? In other words,
Well, that's part of the reason for it. Yeah,
Thank you, Jim.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you.
one other thing, you mentioned that trucks are what is on business for trucks is frequently charged, but on the chart, it only shows 3. Texas City, Port Arthur, and Bay City.
Those are the ones that do definitely charge.
So it would be a fair statement to say that most people don't.
Most people don't. Either because they don't use trucks,
Right.
or maybe they don't charge. But I'm thinking that if we want to, we're not gonna be outside the norm if we decide to. The other thing is it really worth it to try to charge fees for trucks? It's based on the amount of material that they bring in, and in the case of Helena, they're trucking in fertilizer instead of using the rail.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to process this. One other question is, I don't see Port of Palacios, don't they have a port?
They do.
And it's not a comparison thing. Quite a few of these ports are a lot bigger than us, Corpus, Galveston, Brownsville, Freeport,
Yeah,
you know, and does Rockport have a port?
they do.
And that they're not on there either. So to me, if we were going, I don't want to create any more work. I was just gonna say, if we were gonna try to compare, I don't think we ought to compare ourselves to Port of Corpus Christi. I think we ought to compare ourselves to ports that are more similar in size and location.
Yeah, and have similar traffic patterns.
Well, do they have commercial port? Rockport? Like, I mean, when I say commercial, I mean like Helena or somebody like that?
I think it's just a sailboat.
It's mostly commercial fishing and
Fishing.
pleasure boats.
Pleasure boats, yes.
It's really not a lot of what we do. They don't have, as far as I know, they don't have rail traffic, and they don't have, I don't think they have commercial barge traffic. Now, there's a harbor down there. It's called Cove Harbor.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's operated by the port or,
Do they operate that new rail yard down there where where that old carbon black thing used to be?
yes,
Is that in the,
somebody down there does. There may even be a navigation district.
so I'm saying under navigation district?
Yeah. Keith, what's the guy's name? We've talked to him.
Barrett.
Keith Barrett.
It is a navigation district.
Is it part of it?
Yeah. No, I didn't reach out to try to compare with him.
Believe me, this is incredible. I thank you for your work. I was just,
Thought it did occur to me, Larry, but I was spending way too much time on this.
One of the other things, that most of the, well, I won't say most, Palacios, Rockport are supported by taxes. They have a tax, they lever, which gives them a lot of money, so they don't necessarily need to get the money. Although I think, Keith will tell you that he needs to get it market rate wherever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're effectively subsidized by taxpayers. And then they have money to use to put back into, for example, Rockport generates hundreds of thousands of dollars on beach entrances.
Yeah, right.
It's obvious that you put a lot of work into this. And we've got another meeting, our regular scheduled meeting for April the 16th. I'm gonna ask that you and the harbor master, our interim city manager, and sit down with, I guess, the council member that's in his district. Go with this and make us a recommendation so you can bring it to a vote and present it to council to make it. We've got until June. We don't normally do our tariffs till then, but I would like to continue to move this forward to take advantage of all the work that you have done.
Yeah.
So if you can, by our April 16th meeting, meet up with these 2 or 3, 4 people, make it happen. If not, then we can put it off another till May. I know you've got a lot on your plate.
Here's what I would suggest. Definitely this needs to be done outside of a regular meeting. There's
Yes.
too many details and too much discussion.
That's exactly.
And we've already touched on some of that. There's a couple of local ports, maybe we want to look at them and see what they're doing. But I think that I would like to ask that the city lead this. Jody and Jimbo, you guys call the meeting and I will be there and we'll sit down and talk about everything that.
Or do we want to establish a committee or just a committee?
Question?
Whether we want anybody, establish a committee that can look at this and bring this back.
Not necessarily a committee, I guess an ad hoc committee. Just simply, staff, a council member, to be able to understand and move it forward.
Come on, I Gary. Gary.
That's in his
Precinct,
precinct.
he owns that, that's
Yeah.
part of his,
Yeah.
part of his district.
Yeah.
And so if we can't get a recommendation, once y'all work through this, and if we need to put more rates in place, more teeth into it, which is, sounds like we're not doing the due diligence and not casting aspersions on anyone, but we're beginning to see that there's not a lot, but some loopholes and some leaks in this thing, so we need to tighten it up as we have been over the years, slowly,
Yeah.
incrementally securing our position.
Okay, we'll do it.
There's one other thing here. I would suggest that we focus this on dockage issues. And what we're doing with the bulkhead frontage that is leased is like, does Doug Stevens lease that bulkhead frontage? I don't think so.
No, he's paying dockage.
So that's on a per barge.
Helena
per
is
truck basis.
somewhat of a unique player because they lease that dock frontage. And in that case, we wouldn't be collecting dockage from those vessels. That's by virtue of the fact that they pay us on a periodic basis. But we'll do that. The other thing that somehow we need to pay attention to is the vessels, the commercial vessels that come into the city harbor. We need to make sure we have a way of monitoring that. When all those oyster boats just piled in there, they were 2, 3 abreast. I don't know who was paying for that and how much we collected, but that's something we need to be mindful.
As we continue to move forward, well, outside of track like 9A and 9, most everyone is leased out to a tenant, and that tenant then is responsible for those boats that are pulling up there, unless they are making money. We had that situation some years back where we had a tenant that was subleasing an area and made themselves $20,000-$30,000, and we forgave it, which we shouldn't have, but we did. And
Does the lease allow for like,
no, sorry, sir.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but while you're
Go
talking,
ahead.
does the lease allow for like in the city harbor or harbor refuge, does it allow for them to be tied up alongside of each other without,
I don't think,
even on a lease?
I don't think it contemplates that.
It doesn't even get that far.
It's like a slip basis or a frontage.
It's not on a slip basis.
And they're taking up room in the,
Basis.
Right.
Well, from what, I mean, this strictly is from what the guy that did the appraisal for. He was telling me, I mean, you, one or two ways, you either lease. By the frontage of the dock space, which is essentially how he slips or whatever.
so they can put them all, I mean, they could put them all the way across the harbor.
You wouldn't do both, so it's one or the other, what he explained to me. When he was in, when he evaluated them or provided value for them, he did it based upon the acreage, not the.
Well,
I was just wondering how far they could take it.
Frontage.
Yeah, like you said, because you could tie.
Yeah, tie them up and walk all the way across them.
That's right.
Everybody's access to waterway.
Even if it is on a linear foot basis.
You don't double up, I mean, clearly not out to where you're in the beach.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're gonna be faced with that again for a while, but it is something to think about.
Track 10, we leased the frontage and the acreage. I don't believe we're leasing the dock itself. Are we leasing the dock and the frontage?
I mean, I
Like
believe it's the
at
same.
City of Harbor and
It's
Curtis?
it's the same thing, it's based, we're leasing that track, which is the acreage. And all of Curtis's is by acreage.
His is divided in slips though, right?
The discussion is trying to true up.
But we're not, yeah, but we're not charging by slip.
I know, but I'm just saying they couldn't do what we're talking about, what I was talking about. They can't double up over there. Because it's a slip.
And well, on the long part of Curtis's, I mean, they're all backing into
Right,
backing into it.
yeah, and that's fine. What happened over there in the, north of that, in that little, what used to be Bob Clegg's place,
Yeah,
they just doubled up and,
so yeah, I mean, clearly, yeah, we need to get stronger in our language or more particular in language in the
yes,
lease.
and that's not a major thing, but it's a hole in our, it's a hole in our revenue net.
Make. Sounds like there's a lot of work and the April 16th may not be practical. But make a bullet point to address these things that you brought up so that the city and staff can be prepared. You know, look at the leases. Again, we're trying to true those where we have consistency, which we're not being consistent. We're doing different rates for different people and different opportunities. But are we leasing the land, are we leasing the dockage, or are we leasing both?
Yeah.
Check those leases and find out so that we can become consistent.
Yeah.
We have a situation now where we're trying to lease track 9 and 9A. We have a couple of tenants interested. How are we going to do that? Track, I think 9A has a lot of property with it, not just the waterfront. Of course, we have the big improvements. Concrete and all that. I don't know, that was $300,000-400,000, $1 million. I don't know how much it was. Don't remember. Okay, that's a huge improvement. Are they getting charged just for the $225 a foot? Or are we getting something for all that concrete?
Yeah.
But rather than leaning on trying to get it done by the 16th, which is just a couple of weeks away, let's go to our May meeting. That'll give staff and you time to go through these items. And Larry, you expressed an interest. Would you like to join the ad hoc bunch?
I could try, I'm gonna be gone some the next couple of months, but
Okay.
I'd be fine.
I think you could bring a lot of input to it, but I understand priorities.
Can I ask one more question, Brandon? I was looking at the rail section. Can you explain what the wording means in like for the Port of Victoria, 3 free? What is it talking about? 3 free rail cars or what is it?
Yeah. That's really getting into the weeds. And I didn't go too deeply into that, but having worked at the Port of Victoria for a while, that's kind of how they do. They have tremendous rail traffic there, though. They have several 100-car trains that come in there.
So that's what that meant, 3 free days?
Yep.
Or 3 free cars,
It's,
$20 a day,
yeah,
yeah,
I think it's 3 free days.
3 free days.
Yes.
And then it's $20 a day after that
Right.
per car,
Those are cars that just sit on there
just for storage?
and they have an active shifting process going on.
They have a locomotive, they move things back.
They're on cruise, yeah, they have their own cruise down there. I know some of the guys that work over there.
There you go. Yeah, well, you probably know more about it than I do,
Well,
but there's a lot of
I
rail
know you're
activity.
incredibly busy, James, but you're more than welcome to join them if you find and have the time. Participate in tuning up and bringing this into, fruition.
I don't have no problem, as long as it's not during the middle of that damn day.
Always reach out
You're
to
working
James
for a living.
whenever y'all are doing it. And allow him to be a participant and a member. But he stays so busy, it's just.
The best format by far is for us to sit down and try to work through this in a small group.
Yes. James?
I just wanted to kind of bring y'all up to speed on what I had done. I had reached out to Gulfmark, which we typically don't do because that lease is not to Gulfmark, that lease is to Equalizer. And I explained to him the situation, kind of what was going on. And I did not know how we were gonna handle it, but there would probably be some changes. Of course, the information, when we did this, they weren't paying any docket share up till a few years ago. Remember, we came. Well, you know, that was not per se, I think the way they took it. Or the way it was conveyed to Gulfmart is that, you know, they just thought that they would pay that doc. Didn't realize that that was a per day fee.
Yeah.
And the way it was presented, I'm almost sure about this, you know, because I went back and looked. And, you know, I don't think we're losing out a whole lot, but we are losing out for fees.
Yeah.
But the way that this was presented to equalizer was that it was on a per day basis, and that was not conveyed to Gulf.
Okay.
And I just let them know, and I said, you know, and I talked to Jody about this, you know, one of the ways to kind of track this, of course, you don't know how many barges are in that total. But typically it would be, you know, two, and it's to track it through Port Vision. Of course, Port Vision is very expensive, but I mean, it's got a history that you can reach back into, you know, years.
Yeah.
So you can see exactly who's coming in, who's not. Of course, it's not gonna track the shrimp boats, you know, because it's all off of AIS movie.
Well, that's a whole nother area. We need to set the rules of the game
Right,
and then try to enforce it.
right.
We need effort from both places. I will say this, the Port of Victoria Gulfmark has leased a frontage. They have leased a dock area. So they don't have dockage issues over there right now.
Right.
And so they're not used to it. So Port of Victoria is gonna change that though.
As soon as their lease is up, they will.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They,
Well, we looked at this.
while I'm thinking about this, very, very few of the ports in Texas. And I don't know about Lashes or so much Rockport. Very few of them actually lease frontage, bulkhead frontage. They don't let that get out from under them. Virtually none of them do. So if a vessel comes in there and lays alongside, the meter starts running. The boats, barges, a service fee, and in some cases a fireboat, security fees, all kinds of stuff. But to your question, those fees are meant to support the record keeping and at the end of the day, the expenses that the port has.
Raymond, in compiling this data, how difficult would it be for us to show some projections on potential lost revenue? That'd be kind of neat to see, so we can see exactly what we're not capturing, whether, you know, because that to Larry's point, you could justify, okay, well, if we're losing $5,000 a year, it doesn't justify adding another person, you know, another expense just to monitor five.
We could go back with a halfway decent record of vessel callings, movements. We could go back and say, here's what we would have
That'd be nice to see.
collected.
It made me a little nervous. Jim made the comment about a vessel tracking service, but he said very expensive.
Well, I thought maybe we could maybe talk to Charles now, 'cause I think they've got a Port Vision account, and maybe we could.
Piggyback with them?
Yeah, just piggyback off of
Doing
them.
in a local agreement with them. Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
At least you know who's coming and going, and you can make.
that's worth the conversation.
You know, very honestly, I'm surprised the Coast Guard doesn't get on us about tracking. Maybe they don't care.
They have to, you know, they've gotta give like a 24-hour notice before they do any loadings or.
Yeah,
I'm talking about in our little port, the Coast Guard not paying attention to us, I assume.
we're not deep draft. So they really don't care.
Barge traffic over to the other port?
Right, they don't care. They don't keep track of that.
Okay.
But the Coast Guard does have to go out and inspect a certain
Yeah.
portion of the deep draft vessel
Yeah.
before they come in.
Right.
But I do know that what we used to do, like in Corpus, we had a lot of cross-channel visits, so.
Yeah.
All those dockage fees and security fees, all that came back to us, and then we'd send them back to whoever we were working for, you know.
Right.
Just a pass through.
Exactly.
But, and I told Jody this, that might be the thing to do too, is, you know, kind of keep that separate and go back, try to track it back to storage company or whatever.
They're used to paying those fees. It's not money out of their pocket.
No, they're just passing.
Cargo owners.
Yeah, they're just passing through that.
Speaking of security,
But
what do we have security wise?
We don't,
Does Helena have?
other than
Helena?
Joe Reyes driving through there once in a while and maybe the police department, but we have none, these big
No.
ones.
There's no Coast Guard requirement? For any of the hazardous material?
yeah,
Well, they don't, they have to meet Coast Guard requirements for liquid transfers. And I don't know exactly what they are, but we have no security down there. The plans that I recall don't require it unless if you're transferring cargo, like that crude oil down there, somebody's supposed to be watching over that. Now, it could be that the tankering guys that come down there and do that, they're serving that function. But the Coast Guard does require that.
Who does that responsibility fall on? The owner or the person doing the work?
It's the, it would be, in that case, it would be, GulfMark or Doug Stevens. Guy who owns the terminal.
Because it is wide open down there.
It is. It's wide open.
Of course, you notice, right, where their loading equipment is, there's fence around it, of course, there's fence around that whole terminal, so.
Mhm.
And I know they don't have to have anybody there 24 hours, just only when there's any,
When they're transferring cargo.
do they have, when they have a truck there, the only person there is the truck driver.
yeah, they just pull up there.
They put the window down low.
That falls under DOT though. They have to have somebody there when they're offloading. Somebody has to be watching.
Well, the truck driver doesn't count.
I guess if he's qualified to do that.
Okay, if he has the proper qualifications.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, a lot of times I'll drive by there and there's a truck just unloading there and I guess they go into those tanks. And then they bring the barges in periodically and pick those tanks up.
Yeah.
No, there's about 90,000 barrels a month going through there right now, which is not a big report, but it's kind of nice. We pick up our tariff fee.
Good tariff.
And by the way, that is all trucks.
Yeah.
Coming in. And we capture that. I think when it goes to the barge, we capture that, because that's what that's what they report back to us.
That's it. Yeah. That's pretty easy to capture.
I didn't mention, Councilman Tippett. A couple of these, the city harbor and, the marina are in his district, but the majority of what we're discussing is going to be affected at the Harbor of Refuge.
Yeah, Daniel's district starts at Austin Street.
I'm sorry, sir.
Daniel's district starts at Austin
That's
Street.
what I'm saying. I
North of Austin.
didn't mention, and you don't want a huge group,
No,
then you make no progress. So I think,
Right.
I think, the original, ad hoc bunch would be, the way
Yeah.
to maneuver with this.
I'm comfortable with the three of us and whoever else wants to come.
Yeah.
get Daniel over there. He needs to learn about what goes on at the port, because it is,
I'll say this, honestly, with the activity we've got down there, we need somebody looking over. We are a port. We're just a small one, but we do have hazardous liquids transferring or go
Well,
transferring.
now you're validating, Mike McGuire's point about the firemen and the policemen being involved. He keeps bringing it up and it happens for a day or two and then it just kind of falls by the wayside.
Well, somebody ought to be reviewing the permits for that crude oil transfer operation, the flare facility, security around all of that.
Put that on your little bullet point and
Thank you, Raymond.
bring it up.
More going on down there.
There really is a lot going on down there. And we don't want to find out about what we haven't been doing because somebody had a major spill, a fire, or a sinking, a major accident.
Well, and we don't anticipate it getting less busy.
Right.
It's better to get the stuff in place now when we, have the capacity versus wait. So,
You're right. And we also, I'll throw this in, we need an ambassador that's selling this place just like a little port.
Yeah.
Okay. All for me.
Well, thank you for all your hard work and you're gonna be continuing this little project. I say little. Moving forward, then we'll go on to agenda item number 2, review Helena's Agro Enterprise lease and tariff requirements.
That's paperwork.
That was brought on by Commissioner McGuire, right?
Two things. I'm gonna pass these out, which is the same thing you've seen several times. And I do appreciate Jody getting us some input. Well. Pass those around there to him.
So that's.
Thank you, Brandon.
It goes back to the Helena lease that was signed in 2018. And
Jimbo.
the reading concerning the railroad information that they signed in 2018. And as a business person, when I read this, they are responsible for the railroad repairs, usage, whatever. And it just specifically said all costs and charges. And so what I would like to do is to recommend that if there's questions, which I think Jody raised some questions through Attorney Hughes, I would like to recommend the council that we engage a real estate attorney who has, been fighting things like this, that we can use them to evaluate whether we actually have the right to charge them for the repairs and specifically the under passage of the waterway underneath them that they have been using since they signed up. And there, when I read it as a business person, I obviously believe that it's a tenant they owe us for those charges. But I think we probably ought to be more serious than just who's experienced in doing this kind of law to advise us, and that requires permission from council to do that. It's not a lot of money if we just ignore the the water passage underneath the railroad track over there. I guess the number is around $80,000 or $90,000 we've spent the last couple of 3 years placing ties and stuff like that. And Jimbo, did you go back and look all the way back to 2018? I had remembered there's one other charge in there that early days when the lease was signed. Did you not go back all the way through and check it out?
This is what's on the books, it's 81,000.
I understand it's there, but does it go back and all the way back?
To 2018. I think the first part.
What when was the first charges?
It didn't go back to 2018, I think the first. Late 2020.
Well, there is another charge back, I think, very close, and that's what I would like. But just to confirm that, that's all we have to do. So it's either $85,000, since it's correct, or.
Yeah, and again, I mean, in her opinion, Sandy does agree with you that, they are responsible for all costs associated with maintenance of.
I think the issue will obviously come is that they are still, in my personal opinion, responsible. They have not notified us that they are not going to use or not using the rail. The rail is closed right now. But that damage to the piping underneath the railroad has occurred over the last 20 years, which is about the time they have been there. Maybe 25 years. I don't know how long they have been there. So that has to be replaced. No ifs and ands and buts. And I think at the current time, we're looking.
No, I mean, it would pay for the whole thing.
Okay, if we get that, the discussion goes away.
And again, if. And it could be argued that the grant would pay to. And the city can elect not to replace the rail, and then that would be up to Lano or whoever's leasing down there.
If Atlanta wants to use it, then they'll pay for the rail.
Yes, but, and quite honestly, you know, what we are looking at right now is, taking very seriously, removing that rail and removing those culverts, because they are in. We get a hurricane, a really big storm this summer, that is gonna be a bottleneck. I mean, we were down there a month, 6 weeks ago or so, and it's getting worse, and to where one of the culverts is almost closed.
Yeah.
Way one
The
end.
bottom's kind of folded.
And so.
So the question would be to-
It's a drainage issue right now.
So the question would be to remove it, and then, when we get the grant, go back in and replace it.
And put a culvert in, yes.
From a safety perspective, it's probably the thing to do. But that's,
Yes.
because there is some political issues associated with that. You know, people will argue we shouldn't have a rail system at all there because of the coming across the city with phosphoric acid and liquid ammonia. And so that needs to go back to council and let them wrestle with that. As a person who lives there, it gives me a little bit of heartburn, but not enough to get rid of the railroad. So what I'd like to do, coming back, is to, if we agree that we can look into this railway, the underpass, and just let it go until we get a grant or not. And go ahead and collect from Helena the money we have spent maintaining that railroad. That probably meets the lease. And then the only other thing is to tell them if we don't get paid for that underpass there. I personally believe that they went over there. But that's again, I don't feel comfortable enough. I would, even though I'm a professional. That's not really my skill set. Charge Helen for what we spent up to date. Look. Total underneath the railway, including dragging that rail out of there and the pipe out of there in order, because if we do have a storm, we'll be over that.
Question whether it would be acceptable to, as you know, they are still paying the monthly rail charge. As reimbursement for the balance of the 81,000 that's been spent.
I would like to say that I don't think we should try to back charge Helena for a rail that doesn't work.
Well, it's in their lease to Larry, and Larry, they signed it.
Rail is in working condition today. And we had signed the lease, we should have been charging. It's not working condition today. So now we're gonna go say, now you pay for something that's you're not getting. So to me, I would think the way to treat a customer, a big customer, is to say, when and if the railroad starts going again.
My interpretation is gonna be along the lines of what Jody just brought up. We have spent the money and they utilize that rail spur, allow them to continue $1,000 a month until they clear this $81,000. And in the meantime, we are working on a grant.
I mean, all fairness, they've already paid 27,000, was it?
Well, whatever the amount is to clear the 81.
Or whatever it is that has been spent. I still believe there's another expenditure back about 2018 or 2019.
I think that, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think they were pretty much maintaining that rail until we started charging that fee.
I don't-
Started charging
I do not
that fee,
agree.
That's when it came back and.
Thrown in the diamond or whatever it is, and they looked at it and they said, all this stuff has got to be done. That wasn't just happening overnight. So obviously it had not been maintained up until that point in time.
You know,
They were what?
they were just doing the minimum to keep home.
But if we really believe that there's gonna be other customers at some point in time, which we hope for, it's one of the reasons we're trying to get the tariffs up to compare to Port of Houston. But anyway, bottom line is, if we believe there's gonna be, then it shouldn't all be Helena's responsibility to fix the whole line. I mean, treat a customer like we'd all like to be treated, in my opinion. So to me, charging them appropriately, and we want to start charging them appropriately today, I'm good. But if it's not working and we don't know when it's gonna work, because the truth is that grant, we don't know when we're gonna get it, if we're gonna get it, then we don't know how long it's gonna take to get it done, and it's gonna be way more than the price of today, we all know that. So it might not be working for 3 years, so we're gonna charge Helena a big price, we're gonna hire attorneys, charge Helena a big price for something that they're not getting benefit from for 3 years. That is a way to treat a good.
You know, my recommendation still remains is that they signed the lease in 2018. It was signed by the city and by Helena. When we started looking at the lease and we're looking at the damage that is done. So my recommendation is that we go forth, back charge them for the time up to him. Credit them with the money they have spent. And if we $60,000 at $1,000 a month is 5 years, we're effectively financing them. I don't particularly like that because we can't. If we had the 50,000, we'd spend it right back on something else.
I have some heartburn here. Okay. I'm leaning with Larry. They've been a good customer for a long. A big hole. that I'm not sure we can fill. The letter from Sandra Woody points out that the city did not recognize these charges and these damages for how many years? We were not collecting a banking maintenance fee that's.
Yeah, we started that in 2020, 2020 is when,
Yeah,
brought this up, and that's when we initially had the $75 per rail car per day. But then after talks with Helena, council amended that to $10,000.
okay. So, and they've been responding to that, correct? They haven't disputed any of that. They've been good to bill the maintenance fees as they went. But we did not bill them for the majority of wear and tear on that culvert.
Not the call, well, we didn't know it, not anything, we haven't spent anything over.
No, we haven't, but now we are seeking to. We're seeking to back charge them for something that we should have been monitoring and planning for. And we're gonna get them for a huge back charge. And Sandra Woody points out there's a good legal point that we never brought this up until now.
So they broke.
Yeah, until it finally became obvious that something was wrong.
I don't know that it's Eleanor's fault that it broke. When they signed a lease in 2018, it was working. They should have the expectation that it works.
That's not the track's not, there's not a fault with the rail itself.
Not
It's the drainage, and the drainage is for the,
Track itself is not stable.
I understand that.
So because,
But it's not the railroad. That's not part of the railroad structure.
well, it had to be there in order to build the railroad.
Well, in the ditch somewhere else.
Then that's a permanent ditch.
That's what I'm saying. The track structure itself, there's nothing wrong with it. The track structure.
Yeah.
If that's what we're holding Helena responsible for. So we want them to replace our culvert for the city's drainage? It's having to cross under there.
Yeah.
I agree with you all.
I don't think,
That's a good point.
I don't think we should spend any time or money on this. I think we have a plan, the city's approved the plan for the grant, city council. I don't know that we ought to waste any more time and money trying to back charge Helena.
Either. I know they've got to be eating some cost bringing trucks in. They have to be.
Well, the whole deal is negligible to them. The railroad usage, the tariffs they pay us is negligible. It's probably 2% of their annual revenue. Fundamentally. So it's not a big deal. The question is, we didn't want
to be substituting truck for the rail car traffic that they had. They have to be.
They are. That's exactly what they're doing.
That's more traffic through town
Yeah, absolutely.
at high.
No, but it's bringing It's not bringing in the raw materials, it's bringing in the converted fertilizer. So it's it's ammonium sulfate fertilizer. Ammonium phosphate fertilizer. They're bringing that in on trucks, liquid, I guess, putting in their tanks. And then they're bringing the customers' trucks and they're filling the. From their point of view, they are doing. And then a truck, the output of that reaction. I'm maintaining that if it comes across our boundary, they should be paying tariffs, but again, it's negligible. The only reason to be even worried about this is ultimately if we lost the railroad, we would be unable to attract customers who need the railroad. That's kind of a future thing, to argue that. I mean, you could argue both sides of that.
I mean, if they move their, I don't know what they do over there, and I don't know what they were doing with it.
Well,
But if they're bringing that hydrous ammonia in there and putting it through their.
SSCR. Probably
That's what I had.
trucking it in.
That business has moved somewhere else now.
Yeah, but it's negligible to them and negligible to us. We'll get. Roughly. Or all the liquid.
You've increased truck traffic here too, though.
Well, sure.
Have to.
Yeah, they have. Yes, absolutely. They come around the south side of the loop.
But I did hear you say the concern with the citizens was. Traffic,
And they're not bringing that hydrous ammonia and liquid
but
gas anymore.
I can promise you there's more truck incidents than there is rail incidents. So
Back to the original question.
Well, the original question is, most of our leases have a fact is we forget to charge them, we're allowed to back charge. I don't think the Helen lease has that in there. Because we say if we miss it, we're still allowed to go back and make it up. But I've not found that. I really haven't looked in detail for that because personally, I guess I've been in business too long, but sides. And I can testify sometimes the landlord years electricity, one of the office buildings I rented because the landlord had not. And I knew exactly what was going on, so end up paying him. I don't want to create a big fuss, but the bottom line is they are a big company. They're doing that place over there. $500 million to $750 million. It's a big anywhere close to very much money out of it. We're getting about $65,000 a year. Is that right, Jody? $70,000 a year in tariffs, plus the rentals.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I was thinking a little.
It's $125,000, including the rent. It's not a big expense to them. Don't get the grant and we have to pay for it. Then the taxpayers get to take care of it.
Well, I don't think we take care of it unless we get.
Listen, that's right. Is that?
I mean, right now, there are no plans to pay for it other than with the grant.
Yeah.
Why fix it if there's nobody there to use it? You get a grant?
Come to it, but at some point, yeah, I mean, we could, as we.
If we can get a grant, that's great. If we get a customer who's interested in coming here, we at least got a rail bed and we're started, they can pay for refurbishing that rail.
I think agenda item 1, agenda item 2 are indicative of what we really need to work on. And that is really formalizing our activities and running the port properties like a business. We're trying to go back and recapture stuff, and I agree that the horses left the stable. Trying to put them back in that stable is going to be very difficult, very costly.
We're gonna make the horse mad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not so worried about that because with the amount of number of businesses coming in this area, the assets that we're sitting on are not going to get less valuable. Right. They're going to get more valuable. And Mike's point, though, I agree, is that we have to decide how we're going to run it. And those assets need to be run like a business. You can't just keep giving it away and giving it away and giving it away on the off chance, because big business comes in and they promise a lot. They always promise a lot. you know, and so there's gonna be that happy medium that we find. We just have to really get a lot better at formalizing our operations and having more accountability, because those expenses should have been billed back when they were incurred. Somebody should have caught that, you know, and that's hard to go back, and to Sandra's point, I think she's spot on, is that 5 years later, going back and recapturing that, the only people gonna make any money out of it are gonna be the lawyers.
Yep.
So we just,
I go back to what I originally said. I think to Jody's point, at $1,000 a month in March long until we try to recapture as much as already out there. And shame on us for not having been more responsible or watchful of the leases. We had to put up a $4 million bulkhead. You know, it was in their lease that they maintained it. They didn't.
Mhm.
Or we didn't go back to them. Now we're charging them for that lease where we didn't in the past.
Mhm.
We just.
Mhm.
We need a motion here, which I doubt. I think we'll just continue to move forward on to the next agenda item.
It appears the general census is to not do anything. So I don't want to row the boat upstream too much.
All right. Well, let's move on then.
Another thing,
I'm sorry, sir.
one other thing, recapture of the real estate taxes that are being paid by our tenants. The real estate property taxes, and I would like
That's
to,
agenda item 3, discuss taxes paid by leasees and their allocation.
I jumped it.
Go ahead.
Well. Pass that around. Okay, you know, right now is that Helena is paying about $125,000 a year. On the property that exists inside the port boundaries. I did not look in detail at Miller or at the other tenants. I did not look at Stevens. But the four things that they're paying for on their appraisal, this comes right off the CAD reporting, is they have their tanks and equipment, which is valued about 1.7 million on the left-hand side. That first column is valuation through the CAD. Second one is the inventory they had on the first of the year, 2023. And so here's taxes, if any. The leasehold improvements, which includes their tanks, excuse me, does not include their tanks, but includes their building. The appraised value is 5.4 million. And on the bottom line is oh, yes, okay. They're paying the valuation of the bulkhead. On the bottom one on the left is the bulkhead is valued at $83,000. That bulkhead cost us and them and the grant 2.6 or 7 million. And $4,500 a foot. Peculiarity of the law, I think through the legislature, has said that you will value at the value of the lease. And so the lease payments that they're paying is $83,000 a year. So that's what that bulkhead is valued. And they call it exempt property. It is exempt property. If one of us owned that as a business, we would be valued at full value, 2.5 million, 2.4 million. It'd be appraised. If you look over at the port across the way where that's privately owned tanks and things, it's on the tax rolls at the taxable value, roughly retail value. That I don't know if that's fixable or not, but it's something that we're gonna have to get the comptroller's office involved and try to see if that's the real way. Now, Jesse believes this is the way to do it. And he and I have had this discussion 2 or 3 times. Because I don't understand it. But bottom line is, there's $125,000 in taxes they paid. They paid them before the end of the year. Well, all I'm asking is suggesting is that we take those funds and allocate them to the Port Commission for expenditures. And this is about 4% or 3% of the total tax value paid to the city. So there's about $4.5 million in real estate taxes that come to the city. And this is, so it's a negligible amount to the city, but it would allow us to have another source of funding, which we would properly spend on improvements to the port. And maybe it's even some of the projects that we get put off a couple of years, would be able to have a constant flow of funds from not only Helena, but from, and of course, they're paying it anyway, also from the taxes that the Stevens pays, the taxes that Miller pays. Miller's are negligible as well. He pays about $4,500 a year. Something like that. So I think all that, and it goes back to exempt property leases that we're charging for. But right now, recommendation is to ask the city to transfer these funds to the Port Commission account for our ability to spend them on the port properties.
Mike, while we're on the same topic, don't the facilities at Gulfmark fall in this too?
They would. I did not look at Gulfmar. Yeah, every tenant needs to be looked at.
Right, and Encore's got some equipment.
Yes.
that-
Whatever's on the CAD.
Yeah.
You know, because they come down and praise. The only question I have, a little bit of diversion, is what is the value of property like that bulkhead that's leased to them?
Yeah.
Whether that's a proper valuation or not. And I get assured it is by Jesse. So we'll find out.
So where did these monies go now?
They go to the city spends them.
Are we not part of?
There's no question that the taxes are being handled and paid properly.
That's exactly right.
Michael is asking that the council transfer all of the property taxes, personal and otherwise, be transferred from the city to the Port Commission account so that they can be utilized by the Port Commission. Is that?
That's correct. And part of the reason is we're trying to operate like a business with all sources of revenue that come in. And we manage that revenue, the board commission and the staff manage that revenue. And so then we don't go back and we get an expenditure, we go back and ask the city, which they have done several times. When we need some money, they'll pay for it. And we have a bond that a 10-year bond, is that right? That we're paying on, that we use to do Fisher Harbor, several other things. So the answer is, it's a some money, not much money to the city. It's probably more the principle of the thing, which I think Jody would probably argue, but I would like to ask the council to do that as a part, which they can do.
If you were on the council,
Well, I wouldn't, and the reason is because what I would tell you is you need to be independent. Point. We're not operating as a business, which means you can take advantage of all your sources of revenue. It's not that we don't have a places to spend. So the answer, yes, I would, but I'm prejudiced too.
Here's my thought. I would too, because this port generates
Oh,
probably more value and more revenue than is apparent.
yes.
I'm just guessing, but that's the way I see it. With just looking at what we're talking about this morning. We've had a railroad system that's falling apart. Nobody's really paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And we're learning that we're not charging enough. Maybe not charging enough or the right way. We're not monitoring closely what's going on down there. And I think if we can highlight what the value is coming from it, there may be some value there. I know it's moving money from one hand to the other, but
I think the council ought to I think we ought to ask the council and the council can decide.
Yeah.
And
I don't understand. At one point, several years ago, we used to have an account and we had money in there. Now, whenever we go to do something, we always have to ask the council for funds to move forward.
anything of size. yes.
Somehow, things got.
Well, we've been spending a lot of money. We spend it on Fisher Harbor. We spend, as time goes.
I mean, recall, anything over $25,000 has to have council.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Now, I only have 25,000.
That was never an issue with us, no matter what it was. We had an account we could look at and say, hey, yeah, let's do that. We'd present it to council and they'd sign off if they approved and we'd move forward. Now we don't have an account. We just kind of always have to say, hey, let's go do this.
There's a Ports and Harbors Fund,
I'm sorry?
Ports and Harbors Fund.
and how is the Ports and Harbors Fund funded?
With fees
Revenue.
that the ports collect.
Ports revenue.
This is timely because, I mean, you know, annually, this is addressed in the city's budgetary and financial management policies, which we do review annually, and in fact, that is, we did one review to take a proposed amendment to them or clarify for the next fiscal year. So I will, you know, bring this to their attention Monday night when they adopt the language of it has to do with the beach and ports and harbors operating fund.
With the change of finance director over the years, we have just been kind of written off. Again, we used to have an account, it was always monitored and stuff, and now we don't have that anymore.
I mean, I don't know what it may have been here before. I know we do have one bank account. There's a
Yes,
personal bank.
yeah, but there used to be separate little buckets, and that one bucket became one.
And that's what we have Logic and we have the bank account and we have, everything is identified and kept separate through funding accounting, and it's through the ports and harbors fund.
I
Yes, sir.
served on different advisory committees in the city of Galveston. And I consider this an advisory committee, not a tax spending committee. And in the advisory committee in the city of Galveston, we made recommendations, but we didn't choose to spend money. We said, this is what we recommend. The city of Galveston City Council, who went and knocked on doors and said, please vote for me, didn't delegate their authority to spend the tax on spend money to someone else. They kept it themselves and we advised them. And that, because they didn't want to deal with all the details that we're dealing with today. So to me, we're an advisory committee, we're not.
The council has to approve every single expenditure.
Right, so what
Period.
difference does it make if it's in one pot or
Well,
another?
it just, again, it's a source of revenue that's there we can count on. So when we budget, we will budget $100,000 or 200,000, whatever the number is. As part of our budget that we
Decided to.
we're required by council to prepare a 5-year capital plan. This group is through and with Jody's help. And if you do what you do it and it's unfunded, it's just, you know, kind of filling in numbers. This will give us a source of funding. That's all I'm saying.
Which is an element of control.
I don't think so. I don't.
Do you want it within your capacity to say this is our money and you guys don't mess with it, this is our money, we expect it, then it is within your control.
No, it's a budgetary vehicle.
Yes.
It's not our money. It's a budgetary vehicle. We've done it, and I'm gonna say it, we've done it like this for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. All of a sudden, you know, we've never just gone and taxed and spent because we're not a tax and spending entity.
Right.
But we have the funds that we can look at and say, hey, countless times, we would always bring up the fact that, hey, it's like for the harbor, the harbor of refuge. Okay, we kept an eye on that. One day it just disappeared and got mixed in and it's gone. I have no idea where it went. They tell me it's in Logic, but now it's in the big pot. So I have no idea where those funds are and how they're being allocated. How much have we spent? I know it's all gone because we have spent, you know, quite handily, trying to make the budget process work like it's supposed to work.
And furthermore, the council,
I wouldn't want somebody, I would say you guys are advisory, appreciate your word, maybe don't, but don't say this is my pot of money. And I don't get, you guys don't get to choose. We don't, this council doesn't have anything to say about it. This is our pot of money.
No, the
This
council,
is said to.
I mean, the council has the final say on
Yes, they
everything.
do.
I think to Mike's point, Alex's point is, I see it as a metric. Is keeping revenue generated by port assets in a port account is a metric of how well we are performing right now. And I think you go back to agenda item 1 and 2, is that we do not have proper metrics to grade ourselves with right now. So if we commingle it with the rest of the city money and then it doesn't tell us how well we are or are not doing. We can't represent to our constituents, people we answer to, how well the port is a steward of their money. And also too is, again, is that it's unique because the port is a revenue generator. Okay.
But are we?
With the rest of the municipality, except maybe the RV park stuff, most of them, they're not revenue generators.
Right.
The difficult thing is that how do we grade ourselves on that metric, okay? And assure that we have money to invest back in the port that generates the money. It could be the crown jewel, you know, that's kind of it plays a bigger part in this economic. Okay, if council port generated money and decides to reallocate it back over here to parks or different things that are non-revenue generators. And what happens is it takes that money away and we can't continue to reinvest in what's making us that money. You know, so I think, again, ultimate control sits with council, but I think from an accounting standpoint, that seeing it in a port account, even though nobody here in this room, like exactly, we're advisors, but it would be nice from an accounting standpoint to see how well we're doing, you know, versus how well are we doing?
That was basically all I was saying. We are an enterprise fund. In the past, we used to be able to keep an eye on, hey, we're making money, we're losing money, we're overspending. Now we have the county's budget, not the county's, the city's budget, and we spend nilly-willy and don't really have to be accountable for what we're doing. We're just spending. No. Well, how much are we making? Can we plan on painting this building? Can we plan on improving this bulkhead? Can we prove, or do we have to go to council? And we have to go to council. Hey, we're gonna need $200,000 for this project. We don't have it.
Have to go to council.
Yes, you would.
Right.
So,
We always have.
I mean,
We always have.
we're debating interest. I mean, I'm okay with keeping it if that's what somebody
Well,
wants to recommend.
I'll just read to you the current policy is, and it's been many years. For the beach and ports and harbors operating fund, it will be the general policy of the city that the fees collected will be spent on maintenance of the facility. Tax dollars will not be used for this purpose. It was clarified. Included capital improvements, and that's the clarification we're making Monday nights.
How do we know what we can do? We don't know what the funds are.
I'm just telling
We used to be able to see it, and that's what Mike is saying.
and I guess I'm lost. I don't understand. I mean, we budget and we should, you know, you don't want to, or you can't spend money that's not budgeted. So we have a budget, and that's what we base our budget is based upon, you know, revenue estimates and then projected expenses, and then we see how we are at the end of the year. And from what I can tell, I think most of our revenues are is at or exceeding what was projected. I mean, to everyone's point, I agree that where we need to work at is in our fees. You know, in dealing with that and getting that, and you know, I understand now after looking through this that I had a misconception about this lease, which I did not write. That was written before I was around, and I understood, I guess it's based upon the fact I've been around so long that I know this, what the city has spent money in the past on that rail, and that's just the way it was. And I understood that the rail was part of, everybody understood what Helena was leasing, that it came with rail. I understand now, right or wrong, that was not written into the lease. And so, yeah, that they would be responsible for any costs associated with that rail system. And so, yeah, those were some revenues that we need to discuss with Wayne. But as far as the other thing just to think about, again, this is, I will definitely bring this to council, bring it to the finance committee's attention, which we're meeting Thursday night. And, make this aware to council that this is something that the commission is looking at. Another thing to think about is that, one, those tax dollars go to also protect holders in the public with, fire and police. That helps to go pay. Another thing.
Streets and other various things.
And, we recognize that the port. We can study further and see what is the appropriate dollar amount, but historically it is paid from the Ports and Harbors Fund to the general fund to help pay for the administrative services that the general fund does provide. In the finance department, my time, of course, Jim's paid by the port. So
That was always in place and somewhere it got lost.
it's in the budget.
We do what, it's like 14% administrative fee?
No, it's 3% of the,
Rachel and
I think it's like, this year was like 50 some.
but anyway, all that stuff has just gotten, to me, have gotten lost.
It's in the
We
budget.
used to
It's in the
have,
budget.
Out there. I think, as you well know, I've been here 5 years, actually more longer than 5 years. This whole commission, everything's freaking train wreck. Harbor Refuge, the marina, we've done a lot of work. But I think we're to a point now where we're gonna have to make a decision. Or y'all are gonna have to make a decision, and it's gonna have to go to council, and there's gonna have to be a commitment made. Where are we going with this? Because I think we're to a point, we're not, if that commitment's not made. That could be that financial commitment. I'm to the point where I really can't do much more than what I'm doing. I took off Thursday. Guess where I was at? Phone came up, phone rang, came to town, stayed in town about 5 or 6 hours working for the city. And that happens quite a bit. There's a lot of phone calls that take place in the evenings, on the weekends, and none of that's.
I'd say welcome to administration. Administration, that happens to every administration.
But I'm it. I have, of course, Jody and I have Rachel, but we don't get anything from anybody.
Until we secure and get a better handle on this revenue stream as we grow and get some consistent. Someone brought up, hey, we need somebody to monitor the Harbor Refuge. We're not at that point yet because I personally don't feel comfortable enough with the revenue stream because I can't tell what it is. I don't know what the revenue stream is. I know we're generating money and everybody says it's great. Okay. I'm going to wake up and be bankrupt at the Port Commission.
I think we're doing pretty good for the most part, but how it was.
You think you don't know.
There's no doubt that the revenues have increased dramatically over the last.
So you know
7
how it
years.
was when I came.
Oh, yes, sir.
We don't need to go.
We wouldn't be there if it wasn't.
There is another report that we need to generate, let me know, because I did not realize you were in the dark. Because, we provide the reports, the, financial.
I'll go back and look at some of my old reports and old minutes and bring it forth because somewhere finance directors, it just got lost.
Yeah, please, because I don't.
The monthly profit and loss statement, but that replaced the actual report.
I'm unaware of any of that.
I'm sorry, Councilman Ward.
I can tell you when
that disappeared. Dave Roberts, the night I was sworn in, said, "Where's our money?"
Hasn't changed.
That was way back. Having the money separate. I mean, having the money in the.
But it stayed separate.
And when that was clear to change, obviously.
It got commingled when we got the grant to finish or improve the bulkhead.
There, okay, I
At
can
that
guarantee
time, everything mixed out.
that monies that the port generates in fees are not going into the general fund. Like,
They go in the bank account.
they're going to the port, it's fund and accounting. All the money, all the
Yeah.
money's going to bank or lodging. Yes, there's two places it goes, but there's funds. I mean, there, you look at the budget, I don't have a separate bank account for the Ports and Harbors Fund, no. It's all at First National Bank, but there are separate funds. There's a fund, we got, I don't know how many funds, we got a lot of funds.
And Jody, that would be represented on.
Gee, I mean, that's gonna show you what's. And for the Parks and Port and Harbors.
Okay.
So really, the only thing that's not in there is. Well, I was not the only person in there. And so the bottom line is these other people are paying taxes too, property taxes, somebody is. And so if we're gonna, the question, I suppose, that we're gonna put these taxes as part of our revenue, even though we.
But that's,
And
and we can ask them, do we get access to these extra funds? Let me just tell you one other thing. 5 years ago, when I started looking into this, the city was not collecting their taxes on the Harbor Refuge. It was zeroed out. I still am stunned about, I don't know how, because you were getting your money at school. County was getting their money, but the cities was missing up until about 3 years ago. And then we started talking to Jesse, he realized that and he fixed it. So yeah, nobody was looking. Port properties, nobody was looking after it. If they want us to be, and they've asked us as business people, educators to serve on this, that's what we try to bring in. Responsibility. Now, I sure do. But I'm willing to advocate for my position.
Well, Jim brought up the point when he came on, things were in such disarray. And thanks to your efforts. and-
Well, everybody's.
The leases have gotten improved. We're still not there yet. We're moving forward. But this is a point that needs to be addressed, that the tax revenue that's generated by the tenants of the Port Commission be allocated and assigned to the Port Commission. Is that your motion?
That's my motion. You can say it a lot better than I can.
Would it only be a portion of it or all of it? Or where the city's gonna assume all the police?
Well, they're collecting overhead from us. We're
Right.
paying them, they're paying
Right.
$50,000 a year in overhead.
And that percentage, that amount would go up because it's a percentage basis.
Right.
Right.
And the other thing is, if we really are wanting to get the charging them for fire protection. I mean, it is a big deal, certainly.
They are getting charged for fire protection, it's right here.
That's, they're paying like I do. They're paying the same dollar amount per dollar of value. I do.
Right.
And yet we'll go, well, and that's a law. I don't do that.
To Mike's point is they're getting a very steep discount
They are
on
getting it.
property
Well,
taxes
that-
because they're paying an exempt rate versus a for-profit rate.
Right.
So if that was their bulk.
But they would also maintain it and do it.
We wouldn't get the revenue from that either, though,
Yeah,
if they owned it.
I mean, we can sell it.
The Meissen Tech Council will allocate the property taxes that are generated by our tenants. to, council, because we gotta go to the council back, so.
So here's my quick view of it before I second your motion. Okay, comments.
Yeah, if you want to amend it, have at
I
it.
believe it is important for the city, all cities, including Galveston. But I think it's important to highlight the values and where they're being generated, so we'll know on, and it merits more focus, for sure. You found out the property taxes were not even being collected.
Or the city only, not the rest.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm saying there is not, we don't have generating out there with that port. That's my point, not whether we could spend it or not.
Right.
But does the council realize what value is coming from those activities? So they can look in the future and say, maybe we better focus a little bit more, get somebody out there to sell that port and let's make some more.
That's right.
I mean, that these type of things are mentioned. Our current audit, but this will show that the
Okay.
used to be Rex Stone, now it's like.
You had a second.
Jim had-
Forward.
The thought occurred to me that with, you get things in order, because like Jimbo said, you've got all of these things that are just, it's just mixed match, it's just a mess, really. You get that first. And then in relationship to the part about having an account, you want an account in your name,
Oh,
but then we're gonna have to approve or disapprove whatever. And so it's just, is it a psychological thing that you have a?
It's not
It's
an
a business
account,
tool.
it's not an
Business
account,
tool.
it's not an account in our name.
Logic and look at. Boards and all in Harbor,
I mean, basically, you just need to look at the budget. That's all we spent. We can look at our. Predict what our revenue is gonna be for next year and look at the history as far as, quantities, volumes and things that we charge. And we just use historical. Those moving forward, but all our leases, those are predictable. We can show exactly what that revenue is.
Yes, sir.
So really, all we're trying to add is property tax.
The motion is that the property taxes be transferred to the port so that added to our revenue stream so we can make forward progress. We had a second by Mr. Butler. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Have a nay from Mr. Nichols?
and all we're doing is asking. They're gonna have to discuss it and decide.
All right.
Did the motion pass?
Yes.
Did the motion pass?
Yes. Yes. Okay, discuss the Port Commission, agenda item 4, discuss the Port Commission's involvement and participation in MT grant projects, downtown waterfront, public access and waterfront improvements. And Mike brought that up, if you want.
Well, Jody and I've gone back and forth on this several times. My issues was and is that it didn't appear that we had a full discussion in here about allocating funds to that downtown improvement project, part of which exists on the port property on the city harbor. The amount and the how much we should participate on, but right now it's half grant, Joey, am I correct? Half grant, roughly a quarter to the city and a quarter to us. Is that what's right now budgeted?
Where this came from is that we had an opportunity, and I brought that before, for commission to see if y'all were okay with making an application. to Matador Bay Mitigation Trust for a project that would enhance Smith Harbor in the nautical landings parking lot area. And as I began working on the grant, there was, anytime you got a grant, this grant does not require a match, but anytime that you are able to offer a match, that usually increases your chance that you will be able to get it. So I approached council because we had in our adopted capital improvement plan, there was a total of $300,000 that had been budgeted in 25, 26, I think, for the improvements to the parking lots and nautical landings. And that budget, adopted budget was split $150,000 in Fortune Harbor's Fund and $150,000 in economic development. Recognizing that the benefit was not solely to nautical landing and the whole area. So I asked council, I said, we've already got budgeted, towards this project, because, it would complement the project and we could use it as match. We're doing this work, put it all in the same project, and they agreed. And so what I did is I just, based upon the capital improvement, $150,000, that is the intent. If the Port Commission does not like that, or would like to do something different, we can certainly look at that and budget this year and reallocate, make a request to reallocate it in this coming year's SAC capital.
The only question is, and I understand exactly how it came about. If we were to do this, would this be our highest priority item to spend money on? In other words,
if at the point realistically, I know we've been complaining about the parking lot for a number of years. We had budgeted money to do that. The Port Commission had budgeted, I think, a couple years ago, had budgeted $110,000. And then last year we bumped that up to $150,000. But then the city wanted, in order to make it a nice parking lot, the general fund was putting in another $150,000. But again, if push comes to shove to it, the council has committed $300,000. It can be, if it ends up, it needs to be all in general fund, that the council, again, that would be council's decision. But right now it's just budgeted, equally between the two.
We are here to make recommendations, make our ideas heard or felt, and express that, I guess, for the community, because we represent the community. The thing is that you and the council made the decision without including the Port Commission on so many of these items.
I brought the project to the Port Commission for y'all's input. That money was already budgeted. It was already approved in the capital improvement plan. So I didn't think, again, we're probably not.
Mike's problem is he feels like he's being left.
I left out.
You and the Port Commission, you and the city council.
Want to control it. The council's supposed to be in control, not us.
We're not in control, but we would like to be part of the conversation.
I did bring it.
On the waterfront.
The problem in this case, it was, again, there's a timing issue. I went to council because ultimately, bottom line, I did not have time to get the recommendation from the Port Commission to go ahead and commit that $300,000 to the council for them to make the commitment. Because I had a deadline to meet with the application. So I went straight to council. Council said, it's $300,000. And they said, yes.
Just being left out of the loop. It's like the other day I saw somebody on the not the marina, but the nautical landings building drilling a water well or something up there by the highway. What was that about?
Drilling a water well,
I don't know what it was. We didn't know there's something going on in our building.
it's a
I don't know and Jim doesn't know and the count and Port Commission doesn't.
monitoring well that TCQ is doing.
It's what?
A monitoring well. Remember, there used to be a gas station?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And TCQ is requiring a monitoring well to be placed there.
See if it's spread now. I thought we had a water well going in.
I mean, sometimes those little things happen and I apologize. I will try to do better to make sure you're aware of those little things that go on, but that's been something that it came to me, oh gosh, a year ago.
I think we should be cognizant of the amount of time we spend on this side. Yeah, I've heard that over and over again, and it, the council voted to do it. We serve at the pleasure of the council, but it's a big issue for somebody, so
It's a big issue for me, Larry.
no, and it just keeps going, and we eat Jody's time, and that's
That's
not an
her.
issue for you.
That's as far as I'm concerned, it's between her and me. And, you know,
For me,
I do not agree with you at all.
We donate a lot of valuable time. And if we're going to be neutered, then what are we doing here?
That's the really big issue. You have a guy who's been in a large,
In my defense, it was an adopted, approved, capital improvement plan.
but we don't,
It wasn't like it was, I just decided, hey, council, why don't we take 150,000 from them and 150,000 from, it was already adopted in an adopted plan. I apologize, I will, if you need special meetings more often, I will.
Larry wants to be a rubber stamp for the city manager and the council.
Stamp, I just don't want to try to control
Well, then let's have conversation then. Let's have conversation.
here and then say the property taxes all need to go to us. I mean, in other words, how much time does Jody spend on court commission stuff? Investigating things that the council approved. I mean, if, what are we gonna do? Ask them to unapprove it?
Look at this group. Look at this group, Larry.
I'm looking.
And are we not able to have conversation or discussions?
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, we're here for a purpose. If
I
we're just gonna waste our time and go in circles, what are we doing here?
don't know. I mean, I know.
If you don't know, then what?
Help the city, and I'm trying to support the council and support the goals of the port commission. And I think we're doing that, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but I just think if we keep harping on the same thing over and over again, so let's decide, y'all vote to do something, whatever you want to do. Vote to do it, and then the council gonna decide anyway.
Well, I would like to say something. Jody is very, very busy. She's
Amen.
here sometimes on Saturdays and Sundays. I've talked to her about it. But the thing is if you want to come to those meetings, you come to the meetings, you can come to the council meetings, you can speak as a citizen. But the idea that okay, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm just afraid to see you. Well, and I apologize for speaking up. I shouldn't have.
Bottom line, it was not my intention to do anything underhanded or under the table. I thought I was being,
Larry's right. We're an advisory board,
Good man.
and I understand that. And I think all we're experiencing right now is we're experiencing some growing pains. That's what this is, is that, Jimbo's efforts, and the efforts of everybody. These assets are really starting to be seen for what they really are. And it's and with that, I think the thing that I think we're all kind of struggling with right now is, that feeling of ownership. And I guess I have the least feeling of ownership because I have the least amount of history in Fort Lavaca, Texas. So maybe I'm the most independent person to talk about this. When it comes to the port assets, from a business standpoint, I can see what because it's a revenue generation asset for the city. That, we're at a tipping point where we're going to have to staff up to a certain extent to be able to do the things that really need to be done to keep this asset growing and these revenues generating. The thing that I don't want to do is put anything else on Jody's plate because Jody is working 7 days a week. Separate those two things is going to be tough, especially because I think everybody's kind of asserting a certain amount of ownership in it. But in my opinion, there's going to have to be a little bit of kind of separating some of the stuff out in terms of an accountability standpoint, having some metrics and putting, us. Because I can see out of that budget, as those revenues come in, whether it's ad valorem taxes or fees or whatever it is, any personnel that would support the harbor master should probably come out of that budget so that those folks are answering to one master. Because the last thing again with Jody is you want her day could be fully consumed with 32 people reporting to her. And her having to be the funnel to funnel that information up to us and then us back to them. That's unfair. And so I don't know what that looks like. I know, it doesn't surprise me that Jimbo's phone rings and he's up here for 5 hours. And that's one of the things I think we need to address. But the only way that we can address that, council, is there's going to be additional funding needed to fund those operations. And we got to figure out what those operations look like. So I can see all sides of it. It's just one of those things you hate to squabble over it. When everybody, I think, at the end of the day has the right approach. It's just from an accounting standpoint or accountability standpoint, is that these poor resources are going to have to, in some ways, separated out a little bit so they can operate more efficiently. Because unfortunately, the thing that would hamstring us is when you add more layers of this, and we can't get that done because we have to go over here, then we got to go back over here, then we got to come back over here. By the time that final answer is made, the opportunity's missed, or
That's happened.
and so what that looks like, I don't know, but I think that's where we should be kind of working towards right now.
I think for the most part, we kind of are. Maybe we just need to be a little clearer. Maybe, I don't know, I mean, we're kind of pointing out the areas that really need attention, right? We just need to be a little clearer and put it on paper so we know kind of really what direction we need to go.
Okay, it seems to me the council has said that, and noise in the background, they won't have a business unit consisting of the port. Which means they're gonna have to, we're gonna have more assets, people inside the port doing things. If you have somebody selling for you, you have to pay them
Yes, that's true.
one way or the other. They could be selling for the city and the port. So I think, yeah, I think Robert's right, is that if council is interested in having kind of like, I don't know what you call it even. Still not taking any authority away from council, that's not where the goal is. I mean, I certainly talk to my council person occasionally, I talk to other council persons. Trying to figure out, what do they want to do? So we can get some guidance, so we don't, go off spinning off into something that we don't have any business getting into. But you look back 5 years, Jimbo, you look at the revenue, you look at the profitability, amount of money we're generating, it's at least double, maybe triple from what it was when I came on 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago.
It was a mess.
Yeah, it was a mess because
I was on the phone when I got.
it was not being
I want this job.
Everything had been.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, it was,
Yeah.
it was a mess.
I mean, Bill chased me It was a 1 day a week job, or sitting on here 4 days a week.
I forgot.
Yes.
You know, it's just we're experiencing some growing pains and with anytime you grow, there's gonna be tough discussions. And I will say this, they're tough discussions, but I admire the passion in the room.
You
You
guys
know,
put any money
the thing,
in?
if you got passion, you know, I think we're all working towards. Right, but at the end of the day, I believe we're going in the right direction. It's,
I have to say, Jody Weaver has one set of bosses. That's the city council. Not us. We're advisory. We are not her bosses. We don't set her contract, we don't hire her, we. I'm telling you, I had many committees. I had one set of bosses, I was the elected school board. Department of Education was important to me, Mike made a lot of decisions, helped out. And so to me, I think we just need to remember that the boss is the council. And as far as my constituency, it's the council.
I wasn't gonna say anything else, and I apologize to you right here. Let me say this, I think one of the best ideas that you guys have come up with is to get these things, because what Jimbo's saying, there's a mess. Clean up the mess, get those fees all set, so you know where to go. You know, because if you got that organized, it was just like I was telling Daniel, you know, in his business, you have to get your accounting all together first. And then you start operating your business, and then you start investing here or here or whatever, but you get all of that down, and here, this is the first item on your agenda today was to get those fees set. And I think that's a tremendous point. I think you guys have got the right.
They ain't got any Aggie shirt that says that's bound to be good.
Without knowing our revenue, we cannot move forward. Jim needs a helper. We need to spend more money on this or that. And that's all that what Mike was trying to bring up with the tax. Hey, let's find that revenue stream that we used to have. Somewhere in the shuffle of employees, it got lost. Let's get a handle on it so we'll know, hey, can we afford to hire an employee, or can we afford to paint this building?
can we afford to make the recommendation? Okay, let's get it straight. That's just.
As far as the council, we're short in a lot of our departments. I mean, a lot of them, and it's
Yeah.
mind-boggling trying to figure out what to do with the money. I believe.
All right. With that being said, we've had a lively animated discussion, which is always wonderful, being able to speak openly. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And a second, Barry made a motion, we adjourn. Butler said it's second that. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays?
meeting,
Said 3 hours, we were close.
really?